Hey, Internet! Welcome to the year of our Lord 2022. It is time for episode number 153 of the Comic Watcher Show. I'm your host, Matt. With me, as always, is Mike, mighty Mike Akins. How is life in your corner of the world, sir?
Rainy. Other than that, we are happy and healthy. We are expected to get 0.4 inches of snow on Friday.
Whoa.
So my portion of the Eastern Seaboard is due to close down for the next 6 months.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
We're getting a nice little cold blast here in the Sooner State tomorrow. It will be about 22, 23 degrees, but it will feel like -4 degrees. So good times. It will be about a 36-hour ordeal. I'm sure the entire state, at least half of it, maybe 60%, will completely shut down. This is par for the course for us. Like we have routinely the shittiest, least predictable weather in the entire country, and yet we're never prepared for any of it.
Never.
Except for tornado season, and that's when our porches get the best use because we all sit on the porch and watch the fun. So
screw
welcome
that.
to Oklahoma.
Tornado, and the last thing I want to do is be on a front porch watching that MFer. So
listen, I'll tell you, I've lived here my entire life, all 41 years of it, and I've never personally gone through a tornado. So people who think that we're just constantly ducking and covering from Mother Nature's wrath, you're vastly mistaken. Came very close once. But it veered off northwardly for no apparent reason, and that was the end of it. So So this week we didn't have a guest because it's the holidays and people are busy and they don't want to talk to us. So it's hard to book people, but we love them anyway. And we're going to get some awesome guests lined up soon enough, Cody. And so having said that, we thought it'd be nice to start the year off looking back at the last year, a sort of year in review, although we wanted to really keep it positive. 2021 dumpster fire of a year for a lot of reasons, but you know what? There were still a lot of good things to be had, and we prefer to just celebrate the positive. So without further ado, these are our favorite things 2021. It's not just comic related. It could be movies, it could be TV, it could be music.
It could be hair gel.
It could be hair gel / pomade and or beard tamer.
Beard wash, beard oil,
totes,
or beard pomade, whatever you want to call it.
Listen, I'm telling you, my beard was not as mighty as yours. But I've had the whole thing going, and you're working it. So, fathers lock up your daughters, except Mike's married happily for 20 years now. But if he weren't,
because everyone's gonna hunker over a 43-year-old nerd that reads comic books.
Hey, in case you hadn't heard, we took over the world a few years ago.
Sure, we did,
and co-opted everything.
Thanks, MCU.
Absolutely. So, Mike, what was your first favorite thing of 2021?
I think my first favorite thing, and I don't know if it's first, but I think this is something that sticks out for me, is Bliss number 8. And I'm gonna try to talk through this without getting so emotional. But we've done numerous shows where I've talked about Bliss. I've talked about Sean Lewis and Caitlin Yarsky and that team that I absolutely just love. And Bliss, they made a comic, they made a series that was just so good. I think you have a mix of like mythology, you have a mix of real life without it being overzealous, without it reaching too much. And knowing how Sean Lewis writes, you read each issue and you're like, okay, there has to be something more. And as you read each issue, you saw the story of Benton, the father, kind of unfold. And Bliss was, for those who may not know, Bliss,
I think this one flew under a lot of people's radar.
So real quick, bliss was however you want to put it, a drug that you took that made you forget the bad things that you've done, but at the same time you were hurting the people that you loved, and I mean, probably so many people could relate to that, and maybe kind of mold that into their own personal narrative, if you will. But what really caught me with 8,
which was the series finale, correct?
Yeah, the series finale was about halfway through. I'm sorry, not halfway through, the end. Once the story wrapped up, there was about 2, maybe 3 pages of these sketches that Sean Lewis did. I don't know if, let me not say Sean Lewis did, but there was these sketches that were in the back of of issue 8, where it kind of talked through Sean Lewis's what he went through, dealing with his family, his father, and how he wants to raise his son and stuff like that, and coming from a excuse me, a home that was kind of broken up by alcoholism and stuff like that, that really resonated with me. And so I remember when I was writing the review for 8, that review took on a different meaning,
Sure.
and that review was probably, and still is, probably the most personal review that I wrote for comicwatch.com. There was probably about 3 or 4 rewrites to that review.
Sure.
That it was almost like a diary message almost, and I just remember tweeting to Sean Lewis and Caitlin Yarsky, and tagging Image Comics and everyone that would just read a tweet. I talked about Bliss all throughout the series. I was bummed that it was kind of halfway canceled and stuff like that. But then they picked it up because they were going to pick it up. They were going to pick it up the last 4 issues, but it was going to be collected. So it was like you were going to have the first half in single floppies, and then the last half you were going to have collected. But it turns out Image was like, no, everything's starting to pick up after COVID kind of starting to get tamed.
Sure.
And we started getting comics back on the shelves. And so we started getting Bliss back again. And so back to that review, I just remember, man, that like, I don't think to this day, and I remember flipping through my long boxes and stuff, I don't think that I've ever had a comic touch me in the way that not only the series touched me, but Bliss 8, just those certain sections, and then you go back and you read it, and you read the story of Ben, and you read his struggles and stuff like that. And it's kind of hard not to sit here and go, what person wouldn't do that? What person wouldn't kind of take those extra steps? And you're not thinking of the danger, you're not thinking of the people that you're hurting. You just want to make it better, because that's your job. You want the good life for your family. You want the good life for your home, but to what ends, and you don't see who you're hurting.
Right.
And so that issue, that whole series, and we'll talk about other books, and we'll talk about, music and what music, movies and whatever. But to me, just looking at my notes over here, and I'm kind of like looking at the different things, and excuse me. And I think Bliss, not only as a series, but especially issue 8, really sticks out as that highlight. Like, if there was something that I was going to constantly, that wasn't like on like a Pearl Jam CD or something like that, it was Bliss. And I still find myself going through those floppies and reading those, and not even really reading those. Sometimes just you want to look at a panel, or you remember a panel or something that maybe Sean Lewis had wrote about, but you're not sure of the issue or something, and it's kind of
Right.
at you a little bit. And so you're flipping through, and then you go through and like, God, well, I've already read like 4 or 5 pages of issue 5. Well, let me stop it. Let me reread. And now you're rereading the series again. And
yeah. And I mean, then that's not a massively time consuming thing, right? I mean, it reads relatively quick, and not to its detriment or anything. I mean, it's still a well crafted story. all
Absolutely.
across the board.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like, you know, I went into Bliss based on your recommendation and your
Right.
reviews, and it was, you know, I wasn't familiar with either creator at the time, so I had no idea what to expect. I really didn't know what it was about.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, my buddy's talking about this kick-ass comic. Yeah, I'm going to check it out. And we did an arc review on it on the show as well earlier this year.
And
So I went in there and, you know, I didn't have the same home experiences that you did that to lean on, but all of my musical heroes are dead because of drugs.
Sure.
So like for the most part. So I mean, like, I could definitely identify with the sense of desperation and isolation. And I mean, let's be clear, a lot of my friends that are still my friends to this day have or are still grappling with substance abuse issues. So I mean, this is definitely something that I can relate to, but in a different way than you. So to be able to see it and be able to thread that narrative through the lens of a family life and thinking you've got a stable family, but really you're hurting him and you don't even realize it. Like that whole narrative was extremely powerful and really just well crafted. And I think, like, to repeat something I said earlier, Bliss is one of those things that I think just flew under a lot of people's radar this year.
I think it did.
It deserves to be talked about because it's a fantastic comic.
It really is. And the one thing I love, and one thing I read about Bliss in previews, and I was like, okay, you know, Sean Lewis, okay, you know, you're good, and Caitlin Yarsky, okay, you know, she's fairly new at this point. It sounds neat. It's Image, and I'm kind of I'll read almost every Image book almost once, just because I enjoy their product.
You know, at this point, the volume of quality in their product generally speaks for itself. It's rare that you read something from Image, and even if it's not necessarily for you, you're like, okay, this still has merit, right? It's rare that you read something from Image and it's like, God, that was just ass.
Right. And even if you don't like the floppies, maybe like, well, I'll wait on this and maybe I'll read it as a collected version, and maybe it'll vibe a little bit better. And most of the time that's the case. But with Bliss, what kind of caught my eye first and foremost was Caitlin Yarsky's covers, her art. You know, because at this point, like I said, I knew about Sean Lewis. I didn't know about Caitlin Yarsky. But to me, her art now, as I'm starting to follow her, and now I'm starting to pick up books. Like I'm starting to get into more of the Black Hammer stuff because she's working on Black Hammer and whatnot. And to me, her art is very distinctive to me. I'm not trying to say like, oh, she's like, you know, like Kirby status, and I'm not saying that.
Sure.
But for me, when I see Kevin Eastman art, I see Caitlin Yarsky art, you see Kirby or stuff, you know, from across like a convention status, or you go into an LCS and you see like, oh, wait a second, that's, you know, that's Jim Lee, or maybe that's
right. You know exactly what you're looking at, who you're looking at.
Right. And so with Caitlin Yarsky's art, it was almost like so surreal that it added to the story. You know, like you could have, like, Bliss could have been a silent book, and I think it would have been just as deep without the words, based on Caitlin Yarsky's art, just because I think her art in Bliss was just as powerful as Sean Lewis's words.
It was a perfect marriage of art and words.
Right. I could be extremely biased because there is a huge personal connection.
You are, but that doesn't make it less true.
Sure. Like I'm absolutely biased to Bliss, but I do think that in a non kind of judgmental way, if you were to look at the art of Bliss, you know, you're like, God, it feels personal. The words feel personal. The whole series feels personal. And to me, comic wise, and I know there, you know, Dark Knights, Death Metal, there was these huge huge stories that happened in 2021 that were way bigger than Bliss. I get that.
Yeah.
I like you said,
more personal stuff that counts.
right. But you hit it right on the nose that this series, I think, flew under the radar of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's almost a comic book disservice to not give it a chance. You know,
I mean, and there's plenty of things out there, especially if you're talking about maybe a more prolific writer like Jeff Lemire, who's always got something going, right? Several somethings going. There's going to be things that just fly under the radar.
Sure.
I mean, it kind of just is what it is.
Yeah, there's too much stuff to take in for something not to get missed.
There is. And that's kind of what, like, the first high point of 2021 that I want to hit is this ongoing trend of just the embarrassing wealth of awesome non-superhero, non-big two comics that are out there right now.
That's right.
It is if you know, you'll of course in social media and in the LCS or wherever, you're gonna inevitably hear comics these days suck. Boo, boo, boo. They were better in the 70s. They were better in the 80s. Whatever, dude. There is a stupid amount of awesome freaking comics out there. I mean, Boom, Image, Source Point, Scout, like all of these. Valiant. Shout out to our man Nick. Like just and it's not just like these little tiny indie books with creators you've never heard of. There are big names gravitating over to these publishers that want to play in their yard a little bit. Ahoy, right?
Yeah.
They Aftershock. God, Aftershock is like stupid thick with talent. There's a new Garth Ennis war comic coming out in February, like oversized, like the Black Label books at DC, called The Lion and the Eagle, that looks insanely good. I mean, just there's literally something out there for everybody right now. I mean, if your thought process is comics suck now because they weren't the way they were when I was young, whatever decade that was, right?
Yeah.
You're just deliberately not looking.
Right. And the thing is, and I get stuff changes, and
of course. And it should. If things didn't change, then the industry would be static. And it would eventually get supplanted by something else.
Right. Well, the industry wouldn't, like, as much as I'm gonna say really like, possibly love, the 90s.
Sure. Man, look, we both love the 90s. We're both products of the 90s.
Right. But the thing is, can you imagine if comics, especially the way they were written in the 90s and drawn,
right,
if they were still the same in that? Now, I'm not talking about, take, for example, one of my favorite series is Witchblade.
Okay.
So it could be early Witchblade. It could be Ron Marr's Witchblade, just Witchblade. Sure. Can you imagine every female superhero, every female, comic entity being drawn and written like Witchblade? Like,
yeah, that would be terrible. And I mean, look, in the 90s, during the Bad Girls and / Image hype bubble, early to mid 90s, that basically was the case, right?
Exactly.
And like all things, it petered out.
Right.
But also, like all things, it still has a niche audience. You can still go out there and find that cheesecake type stuff if that's what you want.
Sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're, I know when I'm digging in, the dollar bins, the quarter bins, whatever you got, I am a sucker for a chromium or die cut cover.
Oh, brother, dude.
I mean, that
sound when you flop around a chromium cover, just yeah. Man, look, I've got my Generation X #1 still. Like, I remember, I love that thing. X-Men Omega, X-Men Alpha, man. Marvel and Image were the kings of that shit back in the day.
Yeah,
but look, times change.
Yeah, you got to change.
They have to. But man, look at the diversification of not just publishers, but the content from the publishers, right? Like, you couldn't have told me 25 to 30 years ago that Image, for example, would be putting out a book like Stray Dogs, which we both loved. We had Tony Fleece on the show earlier or last year. And that's actually one of those things I really want to talk about how much I love, because Stray Dogs was amazing. It's the comic that nobody knew they needed until they read it. And they were like, oh my God, I need more of this right now.
It was an idea that should not work.
It's I feel the opposite way. I think
really
it's an idea that is so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe nobody thought of it sooner.
Right. And the great thing about Stray Dogs is for all the covers that they did, which when we had
all those homage covers, yeah.
Right. When we had Tony on and we talked about all the homage covers and stuff like that, and I asked, I was like, how does this work? I mean, how does no one stumble upon this? How does no one take, like Don Bluth and Silence of the Lambs or Stephen King and go, let's make a story.
Right.
Even with all like the speculation and some of the variant covers are astronomically super crazy high price.
Oh, really?
Speculation be damned. Stray Dogs is a magnificent story.
Right. Now, other end of the spectrum. Let me sidebar that a little bit, or I don't know, maybe make a point here. Other end of the spectrum, also at Image. Huge year for Spawn.
Ooh.
Right? Spawn Universe, Spawn 300 and on, right? Gunslinger Spawn. Gunslinger Spawn. He's got a cowboy hat now.
We'll talk about some King Spawn here in a minute.
Oh, King Spawn. Yeah. Hello.
John Lewis, reinventing Spawn.
I don't think anybody, foresaw that we'd have multiple Spawn titles on the shelves in 2021, and B, that they'd be good.
Yeah.
Right? Like Spawn is a niche audience comic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was huge in the 90s, obviously. Back half of the decade, last few years, and basically on. It's just like one of those books, like Cerebus, for example, that the guy that runs the LCS will order enough copies to fill subscriptions, and 2 or 3, and that's it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, shit, we're talking about Spawn, and Spawn is really good. He has a boot, and he's got shoelaces in his face, and a big floppy cape that looks sort of like a symbiote. And for some ironic, weird reason, and magic chains, and he lives in a trash can or something. And
he's not Grover on Sesame Street. What are you doing?
Look, I haven't read Spawn up until recently, since like 1998. So forgive me. But
I stand strong. And a quick jolt to semi-interrupt you. I do think that Uncle Todd, as much as I love the Todd father, and I'm sure he knows this because he is just the absolute businessman, that Sean Lewis has absolutely rebirthed that franchise with King Spawn.
Oh, yeah. Look,
no doubt in my mind, I'll go up against any Spawn fan. I'll go up against Nick, anybody. Sean Lewis has just breathed a new life into that Spawn franchise.
Yes. Per his contract, though, Nick is only contractually allowed to talk to us about Valiant. So we better hurry up and start talking about Valiant.
Well, the thing is, I love Valiant and video games. So,
hey. But yeah, I mean, like, bringing that all kind of back together, just even speaking from the one publisher, you've got the Stray Dogs on one end, Spawn on the other end. Saga is coming back. That was a giant announcement earlier this year. I mean, the book itself doesn't come back out until later this month, but the announcement itself was like literally 2 years overdue. And
that's gonna be when that comes out.
Listen, nerddom is not ready for the second half of BKV and Fiona Staples' magnum opus. I'm like just crapping my pants in anticipation.
Right.
I've lost all control of my bowels. It's just a terrible situation. But that's 2022. We're here to talk about 2021. So, Mike, what else?
Yeah.
What else was your favorite thing this past year?
Oh God, so much. I mean, I'm gonna go for another low hanging fruit here on this.
Do it. Yes.
I'm gonna go Last Ronin.
That comic is never going to finish.
It's really not. We're gonna be doing this shit. Pardon my French, kids. In 2025, and Kevin Eastman, actually not a fan of the show, but a fan of Comic Watch. Good sir. He is going to be working on this book with Ben Bishop till 2025, and you know what? I'm here for that
because there's only one more issue.
We have one more issue, and I believe when Zoe starts 9th grade in about 10, 12 years, we should have Last Ronin 5 come out.
The Last Ronin 5 is the 2021-22 equivalent of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen number 4.
I may be buying my bourbon from 7-Eleven at that time, but you know what? I'm gonna have Last Ronin 5 in my grubby.
Listen, I gotta tell you, as someone who definitely waxes nostalgic for TMNT,
sure.
but doesn't necessarily keep up with the modern iteration of it.
Yeah.
Like I ought to be. Sorry, Sophie.
Gotta read that Sophie TMNT.
I know, and God, Ooh. City at War was so good too.
Man of the show, Sophie Campbell.
I know, but you know, I'm like, okay, I gotta check this out. You know, yeah. It's you know, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow for Ninja Turtles, and I was like, okay, you know, lots and lots of hype. I'll check it out. And by golly, all members of the creative team involved really did pull it off. It's not just a cheap nostalgic gag.
Right.
I mean, it's a fully realized story with real emotional arc, and that reveal at the end of number 1, who truly is the last Ronin, i.e. the last turtle standing, hits you like a punch in the gut. Yeah. And then that slow unwinding throughout issues 2, 3, and 4 of what happened to everybody and how tragically this story turned just makes it all that much better. If you haven't read Ninja Turtles since you were a little kid in 1990, man, this is going to hit you like a ton of bricks. And we're missing the 5th issue. Come on, guys. Come on, IDW. But, man, yeah, absolutely. I gotta agree with you on this one. This was absolutely a top flight book.
Oh, for sure. And the cool thing is, I say the great thing is about The Last Ronin is even if you aren't into the current series, of IDW, you can read The Last Ronin and not be lost by anything because
not at all. I mean, it's completely disconnected.
Right. It's a standalone. You know, there's none of the extra characters. You know, there's no Lita, there's no Jenica. The kids aren't there. So with The Last Ronin, I mean, you know, I've read, you know, when Last Ronin was announced and through like issues 1 or 2, there was some weak but semi-valid kind of comparisons to Frank Miller's you know, The Dark Knight and stuff like that of how,
and I mean, yeah, it's got that vibe.
Yeah, sure, and it has that vibe, but the thing is, it's supposed to have that vibe. Like, this story is over 30 years old, you know.
Yeah.
And not to shamelessly plug, but the interview that we did with Kevin Eastman, I believe it was in 2020, right after Ronin was announced, when we did that interview with Kevin Eastman, and he was talking about this, and he went in depth with what him and Peter were kind of going through and why it was shelved, and now that Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz want to kind of unearth this story
Yeah.
that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird birthed, decades ago, and now it's come to fruition. But they want Peter to be involved because it is a story. This is one of those perfect turtle stories. That I think that overall you're gonna talk about Northampton, you're gonna talk about City at War, you're gonna talk about The Last Ronin. Even if you're not a turtle fan, it's the current fan, like I said earlier, The Last Ronin stands on its own. That is just remarkable storytelling. It's remarkable art. It is just remarkable. And this is strictly unbiased. I don't care who you talk to, but this is strictly unbiased, that this is almost one of those books, one of those series that I don't want to say is damn near perfect, but man, it just hits.
Man, it's close enough.
Man, it hits on all cylinders, and you look at it and you're going, God, Ben Bishop with this art, and Waltz and Eastman and Laird and everybody else. Excuse me, because I am forgetting a shitload.
Yeah. A lot of good talent went into this book, and it's clearly a labor of love.
Yeah,
and it's absolutely one of those things too, where you just you can't help but be impressed by the fact that they got Eastman and Laird back on this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys, the Ninja Turtle guys.
Yeah.
Laird, and correct me, Mike, if I'm wrong, but I think Laird kind of sold his interests in the Turtles years and years ago. Didn't want to have anything to do with them, and he's kind of reclaiming his mantle a little bit. And I think that kicks a lot of ass.
Yeah,
so, a lot of happy nerds out there.
Yeah, I mean, the big rift, between Eastman and Laird. I think anyone in the turtle kind of fandom knows about that. You can actually, if you're not in the turtle fandom, you can check out the toys that made us, and they talk to Kevin Eastman and they talk to Peter Laird about TMNT. They talk about the toy line, they talk about the movies, they talk about the sell-off, they talk about Kevin Eastman coming back into the turtle spectrum, but Peter Laird kind of laying off. But The Last Ronin, man, I see The Last Ronin as a collected version. Obviously, it's going to be fairly thick when it comes all done, 5 issues.
Sure.
But, do I say, correct me if I'm wrong, man, but I think as time goes on, I think The Last Ronin may be required comic reading.
I think it's a little early to say that.
Early.
I don't ever like to count my chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
In terms of making grand proclamations like that. But I definitely think that it's one of those books that, 5 or 10 years from now, you could hand to somebody that's maybe never read a comic before, and it could hook them.
Sure. And
because it's an excellent example of the craft.
Yeah.
And I definitely see that. Now, another book that I think we're going to still be talking about 5-10 years from now wrapped up this last year, and that's Immortal Hulk.
Woo-hoo-hoo, yes, sir.
Now it's my turn to gush.
Oh,
I have to preface this by saying that there is no Incredible Hulk run that comes before Peter David's. It's definitive.
Yeah.
You're not topping it. Many have tried. Many talented people have tried. And that's not to knock anybody, but you're just not going to touch it. But my God, Al Ewing came damn close.
Yeah.
But taking the idea of the Hulk himself and turning it into a body horror comic that is also a meditation on the afterlife and good and evil and the subconscious in a way that frankly has never been done before, especially not with a big character like the Hulk. Step back from the series a minute, step back from the accolades, step back from anything other than here's the pitch. We're going to take the Hulk and we're going to turn it into this gnarly body horror comic. And it's going to get really weird and trippy at times. Like just the sheer breadth of imagination that sprung from Al Ewing, and pardon me, the very fact that 50 issues, he pulled it off.
He did.
You know,
Excellent.
everything came together in an organic way that left your jaw on the floor. And yeah, you could have wanted more, but at the same time, you were content and you were satisfied, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just one of those, and God love Alex Ross covers. Holy crap, he turned in some exceptionally exceptional. Like, his work's always exceptional, of course, but
the thing is
very outside of his normal box because of the content. Like, I think it's issue 45 or 46 is the painting of that super emaciated Hulk. Looks like one of those poor people from a famine country.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to look at, and yet, you know, then this is not Alex Ross's normal forte, but God dang, he just sold it. And it's a shame that the series artist Joe Bennett turned out to be a giant anti-Semite, like right towards the series end. So there's a little bit of taint on it now because of that, but that doesn't diminish the power of the work itself. It taints the one half of the creative team.
Yeah.
And, you know, Al Ewing and Marvel did the right thing. You know, Marvel's like, we're done with this guy, screw him. Al Ewing immediately got on social media and was like, no, I'm never going to work with this guy again.
Right.
And I mean, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
But God, Immortal Hulk is just one of those damn comics that we will be talking about 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Oh, absolutely. To go back, what we talked about on Stray Dogs, we hit on how has this not been done yet? I mean, you figure the Hulk is the perfect character for a body horror comic. I mean,
but it's not yes, but it's not immediately obvious, because the more obvious parallel is Jekyll and Hyde.
Right.
And that's always kind of been the go-to.
Right. I mean, the Hulk is obviously a Jekyll and Hyde story. Let's not get that.
It's a nuclear age Jekyll and Hyde.
Right.
That's how Kirby envisioned it.
Sure. And for years, and it worked great. Peter David perfected it. Now,
credit where credit's due. His preceding writer, long-term writer, Bill Mantlo, is the one that actually established that it was Bruce Banner's childhood trauma as a result of his father's abuse and murder of his mom was actually not Peter David's creation, but you know, neither here nor there. Just, you know, matter of credit where credit's due. But you know, Peter David took that building block and just made a defining run for that character.
Right. And the thing is, it's like
the fact that Al Ewing, so many years later, you know, God, 20 years basically after the end of Peter David's run, finally comes up with something wholly unique that builds on what's come before and is just this close to being neck and neck in terms of quality. With that Peter David run, I mean, that's saying something. That's very, very impressive.
And the cool thing I think about Immortal Hulk, and do not take this that I am trying to lessen Peter David.
No, go for it.
But I think with Immortal Hulk and when it's collected, and I think they started collecting it already. I could be wrong.
There will be an omnibus at some point. I mean, it's 50 issues. It fits into an omnibus.
I think that just with the God, this sounds so boomerish, but I think with the modern readers, you know what I'm saying. And God, I was born in '78. I'm really not that old, but I think what Ewing has done with Hulk is going to stand out a little bit more.
I agree with that. No. And I fully agree with. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it because.
And I think you could work yourself into. Forgive me for using a sports metaphor, but I think you have Peter David, which is Michael Jordan of Hulk.
Okay.
And then you have the Al Ewing, which is your LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, newer model.
Okay.
So great, and you could sit here and argue your case.
How about Steph Curry?
We'll give you Steph Curry.
He's less divisive.
Yeah. You could still argue your point, and your point's not wrong, but I think it's a generational thing because Immortal Hulk it killed shelves. Because the thing
absolutely.
It was
when's the last time you heard about a comic like its 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th issue is going into 4th and 5th and 6th printings, right?
I mean,
that doesn't happen.
I mean, issue 25. Oh, it's on its 4th print. It's the 25th issue. Why are we?
That's not because Marvel was short printing it. So hell yeah, they clearly captured lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
For as much as we talk about the big two's out of ideas, blah blah blah. Marvel had a really good year for the most part.
They really did. They really did.
I don't want to. Again, we're trying to keep this thing positive. I don't want to dog DC, but man, Marvel, in my mind, just kicked the pants off of DC.
Oh, for sure.
Like line wide versus line wide.
Sure.
Right. Of course, there's clunkers in there.
Yeah, I think out of this regular series, and especially special events or miniseries, however you want to label them, Marvel definitely had the bigger year.
And I think that's sad because DC, man, they started off so strong. And this is another one of my favorite things this year was Future State.
Oh, yes, sir. Let's talk about that.
Look, man, I'm telling you, when they came out and they said, okay, we're going to replace our whole line with these Future State books from January and February, my first thought was, oh, cool, I don't have to buy any DC books for 2 months.
Yeah.
Boy, was I wrong. Future State, I don't think I read a bad Future State. Well, there was one, and I won't name it by name because some of the creators involved are friends of the show. But no, I'm just kidding. But I don't want to unnecessarily trash anybody's work. But I think that out of all the ones I read, and I read most of them, I think there was just one that didn't grab me. Right? Okay, and it was just whatever. It's my taste versus somebody else's. Who cares? Sure. But yeah, the idea of showing us stuff in the future, just a little bit down the line, and then turning around, back in quote unquote modern times or modern day, whatever. And now we're slow rolling out how we get to the events in Future State, or possibly don't. That's treacherous because it's kind of, it's tried and true. We've seen storytelling like that before. And it's generally just a cheap way to throw cliffhangers out there in a way. Mm-hmm. I've never been a fan of that style of storytelling, but man, Future State just kicked ass.
Yeah.
And there's so God, we got John Ridley writing some of the best Batman I've ever freaking read, and it wasn't even about Bruce Wayne. There's some good stuff that came out of it. Mm-hmm. But then for whatever reason, just kind of throughout the year, all that promise that was beheld in Future State, for me at least, a lot of it fell off. I mean, major exceptions being Philip Kennedy Johnson's Action Comics is far and away the best thing DC has been putting out in the last year. And then the big wrap up to James Tynion IV's Batman run with Fear State.
I got a question.
Yes.
Now I absolutely adore Philip Kennedy Johnson, but if we're going to talk about folks in teams that are kind of holding up post Future State DC, obviously, Philip Kennedy Johnson is up there, but we have to talk about Clunrad and what they've done with Wonder Woman.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to be super real with you. I'm going to listen on this one because I've not read the Clunrad Wonder Woman.
Oh, now I'm here to say I'm not going to pit. I refuse to go Philip Kennedy Johnson versus Team Clunrad. because one, they're two of my favorite teams, and I think they're
just wonderful people.
They are. They really are.
Not to Phil Kenny Johnson some kind of asshole.
They're both,
I don't know. Maybe he is. Who knows? But I don't think he is.
When I met him at Baltimore, and that'll come later in the show, a sweet dude, and but anyway, but I think that Philip Kennedy Johnson on action, absolutely, man, you got to talk about him, but I think not to include, what Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad are doing on Wonder Woman. They're bringing in, like, I don't think, now with respect to Wilson, and what she's done, with we know when she wrote it,
and then Steve Orlando.
Thank you, Steve Orlando.
Then Mariko Tamaki briefly.
Sure, but what Clunrad is doing.
No, Dooney.
Dooning. But what they're doing, I think, is they're elevating that story that I don't think we've seen in quite some time. Now,
so let me just ask you, because like we just illustrated, there's been kind of a revolving door of writers and artists on Wonder Woman in the last year or two. And there's always a lot of promise and a lot of hype. And then for whatever reason, it doesn't land or it doesn't connect, or maybe there's some stuff, some editorial chicanery in the background, or whatever, but it doesn't land. And it seems like it's been hard for Wonder Woman as a comic to find footing and keep it. So as a fan, I'm going to ask you, as someone that is a fan of what Clunrad is doing on the book right now, what is it that they're doing right that's making it so magical?
I think they're taking a leap of faith, but also in a cocky way, because there's this way, and I say a cocky way, and not to sound like Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, or like the I Ching of Wonder Woman writers and artists and stuff, but I think what they bring is a fresh voice to it, and they're taking those bold, daring stories, and they're bringing in mythology, and they're bringing in things that we haven't seen in Wonder Woman in a very long time.
Mm-hmm. They're almost like I know in the first arc she was hanging out with Norse gods or something like that.
Yeah, Norse gods, and then we started bringing in mythology into it, and it's just the way that they are doing it that you can't look away. You can't stop reading. It's just the way they grab you. It's just the way they sit here, and they have a way of telling a story that it may not be the overall best story. When you gather up all the Wonder Woman writers and artists and everyone that's worked on the book, excuse me, but when you look at what Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad have done with Wonder Woman, I think you really have to look at it and you go, God, they really took a chance on this, and it works. And then you read another issue, because you're going, well, you know what? They got me on issue such a number, so let me read the next issue. Well, you know what? They got me on this issue, so I'm going to read the next one. And it's almost like that crash that you see on the highway that you cannot look at, And the thing is, I just remember reading that first issue that Team Clunrad, if you will, did. I'm like, God, like this is interesting. Like they really grab you, and then as they bring in mythology, parts of mythology in there, and you're going, God, like no one really has taken Wonder Woman and put her in these situations, and they're not different situations. They're not situations where you go, oh,
there's always like sort of predictable beats with the types of things you can see in a Wonder Woman story.
Right.
Like,
it's almost
here's Zeus again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, here's Cheetah.
Ares is up to no good.
Right. It's almost, it really reminds me what Cloonan and Conrad are doing really reminds me of what Daniel Warren Johnson did with Wonder Woman when he wrote his story for Black Label. DC Black Label, Daniel Warren Johnson.
Now that's saying something, because I really liked Dead Earth.
I'm telling you, when Daniel Warren Johnson did Dead Earth, he took Wonder Woman and he kind of molded Wonder Woman. He kept Wonder Woman the same,
right? But did something new.
He
with
molded
her environment,
right? And that's what Clunrad is doing.
Okay,
you are getting Diana, you are getting Wonder Woman. Here's your Wonder Woman in this little box, right? In my face, I kind of like line it up, right? But the world is molded, it's expanding.
Okay. Now, see, you've got me intrigued.
And they're not afraid to play with the world. And that's super dope, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like any character that, you know, if you're a writer, if you're an artist, and you're ballsy enough to go, yeah, I'll give you Batman, I'll give you the Flash, I'll give you, you know, whoever, Spider-Man. You can have your ordinary character. This is what you're used to. But everything around that character is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be different. But at the same time, you're going to want to know more.
Sure.
And that's what really will drive me, will bring me into any story, be it DC, Marvel, Image, Vault, Ahoy, Source Point Press, whatever, Aftershock, whatever you got.
Yeah.
Give me that normalness, but change some stuff. Change the socks of Batman every now and then, and I'm here for it. And that's what they're doing with Wonder Woman. Absolutely.
So I'll tell you what, like, you're kind of talking about taking things that are taking the familiar mold and putting it in a new setting, right? Yeah. And I have to tell you, as an old school fan of, just say, a particular vintage of DC, sure. The return of Wally West to his rightful place as the Flash is nothing short of Christmas every day for me.
For sure.
They did my boy dirty when they originally brought Barry back in Final Crisis. He just kind of got shoved off to the hinterlands, and then we New 52'd it, and he just didn't exist anymore. And then he finally came back in DC Rebirth, and then they didn't know what to do with him, so they had him kill a bunch of people in the Heroes in Crisis. And it's like, guys, just make him be the Flash. And hallelujah, he's just the Flash again. And this isn't, Jeremy Adams is writing it, and he's not just doing the obvious, let me revisit the greatest hits from Mark Waid or Jeff Johns. I mean, he's really bringing a sense of now. Like, here's Wally West, here's his family now. He's still recognizably Wally West. He's my Wally West. He's my Flash. And he's back where he belongs. You know, Barry Allen is lost out in the multiverse right now. Whatever. I hope Justice League Incarnate finds him. That guy's boring. Okay. Just boring. Wally West is awesome. And thank you, DC, for finally realizing that. Now, if they will just get off their ass and get Kyle Rayner back to being Green Lantern, and
I'm here.
He's
grab a ring again.
In the shuffle right now. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Jeffrey Thorne, he's over there putting John Stewart and Joe Moline front and center over in Teen Lantern over there in the Green Lantern book. But but man, look, the Flash, and I mean, it's good meat and potatoes superhero stuff. It's not, oh my God, the Speed Force is in peril every week. It's, hey, this guy runs fast and he's gonna fight some bad guys, and he has a personal life and a personal stake in these things. It's perfect. Just blue collar superhero. And you know, that's that book, Action Comics, Wonder Woman. I'm gonna throw one more out there, and for DC anyway, and that's actually going to be the wrap up for James Tynion's second now Batman run with Fear State.
Oh.
So if you've been reading Batman, he's been steadily building all these arcs and these narratives, and it all finally comes together with Fear State, where essentially what he did was perfectly capture the Trump's America zeitgeist via both the Magistrate and the Scarecrow. And I'm not 100% sure. Like, James Tynion's a pretty damn smart guy, so I'm sure there was some intent to the way that he built this and how it works as a metaphor for the current state of America. But I'm not sure if he realizes just how well he hit that nail on the head. Like, Fear State will absolutely chill you because it's so damn close to things that are happening now or very could easily happen now. We're talking about this on January 5th, 2022, which is 364 days after the insurrection on our nation's capital and the assault on democracy, which was a direct result of Trump administration policies and his rhetoric and his lies and his ecosphere's lies. And that's exactly the type of thing that Fear State plays into. The Magistrate is there to stoke fear. The Magistrate is there to use that fear to assert control. Right. And then it all goes to hell when Scarecrow is like, you think you know about fear? Let me take this to the next level because I'm the Scarecrow.
Yep.
And, Scarecrow elevates to, top tier A-list Two-Face Joker level threat. And man, it's just so well executed.
It really is. And
I was super sad that Tynion was abruptly leaving Batman after that arc. But what a high note to go out on.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and you hit on that when we get that elevated Scarecrow character. And I think Scarecrow is one of those Bat villains that doesn't always get his due shine for being as awesome as he is. Because as much as I love the Joker, okay, we get it. It's the Joker. It's low-hanging fruit for any Batman story. It's going to sell books. It's going to sell T-shirts. It looks great and Hot Topic in a window. But what they did with Scarecrow in that arc really kind of, elevated him. And
absolutely.
And it really kind of, if you didn't take notice, and I don't mean this as a dig for the casual comic fans that may buy only collected works, and this is not a dig at any means, but I think that arc really kind of says, hey, Scarecrow is a absolutely badass
man.
Don't with it. Yeah, don't mess with it, because I mean, realistically, he is the least Bat villain I would want to go up against. You know what I'm saying? Because you can get over on the Penguin, you can get on the Joker, but when you got this guy that can mess with your mind and mess with emotions,
inside your head, like that.
He does. He can be 20 feet, 100 feet away from you, and still kind of, and still do his Scarecrow magic.
Absolutely.
He's the only Bat villain that can do that. Everyone else has to be up close and in combat. And I think that, you hit it on the head. I think that's one of those stories with those arcs that may kind of fly under the radar for the non-casual fan.
Well, and Fear State was so well orchestrated and executed that, like, when as it was going and as each successive chapter would come out, like, I would read that chapter and then eventually through to the end of it, and I would just get chills and kind of have to sit and contemplate a little bit, because it's like the best fiction, it's not that far from reality.
Yeah. And that's,
kudos to DC for not shying away from some of the more obvious metaphors that are happening in that comic, and not putting restraints on Tynion and his fellow creators in their storytelling. Now, Tynion's now, basically moved on from DC. He's got his deal with Substack.
Right, Venom.
And,
No, never mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, what a high note to go out on. And I mean, Tynion's just such a phenomenal talent anyway.
No, absolutely is.
So, talking about his Substack thing, it makes, good for him in that he landed that deal, right?
Yeah.
Like, Substack recognizes his talent. They paid him. Good for him. And again, we wanted to keep this positive, and I want to I don't want to dive too far into this because I have some strong feelings about this.
Sure.
But I can't see a situation where more and more Substack type deals are good for the industry and good for readers. Because if you're not subscribed to Substack, you're not getting new James Tynion.
Right.
Which creates, in effect, a monopoly.
I think with Substack, and not to get off on a tangent, but I think Substack is that new pair of shoes.
I think, yes, absolutely.
That is very cool. And God forbid that you are the only kid in school that's not wearing those shoes. Now, and not to.
No, I hear what you're saying.
The whole thing.
And now contrast that a little bit, though.
Yeah.
Because our buddy Scott Snyder, also a friend of the show, got a kind of similar deal with Comixology.
Yeah.
But all of those comics are getting released physically through Dark Horse. And he's still going to be doing other things. So it's not like you must have a Comixology subscription in order to read, something new from Scott Snyder. I mean, for God's sake, just go over to the Image Rack and pick up Noctera. You've got to. But it's an interesting state, and again, good on these creators that this Substack or Comixology or whomever recognizes their value and wants to say, here's a boatload of money, go be creative, go write the craziest crap imaginable because we know people are going to buy it. That's how much faith we have in you. And I'm going to leave it at that for now, because there's a whole nother 30 minutes worth of conversation I think we could probably dive into.
Oh, for sure. We could do that next.
We swore at the start we were going to keep it positive. So, Mike, I can't believe this. We got this far into the show and you haven't talked about Venom.
What? Not Venom. And
he's your boy.
Not Venom. Not Ewing and Ram V coming with that new Venom story.
And let's talk about Donnie C and the big finale for Eddie and the symbiotes and
Donnie
Noel.
Donnie Cates. Oh, the guy, the guy that brought us new characters, the guy that changed Eddie Brock, the guy that changed Venom as the symbiote. Now, when you say Venom, are you talking about Venom, the separate symbiote, or are you talking about Venom, the classic Eddie Brock character? Thanks to DC, that's Donnie Cates, not DC Comics. You got to ask that question now, and which I think is great because you know what, as one of my favorite characters in comics, I think, I'm glad that he has this time to shine. He's a formidable Marvel character now. He's just not some, sidestep to Spider-Man. He can hold his own, and I think what we've seen, that whole Donnie Cates run, we've talked about this numerous times on the show throughout the year. My reviews, and I try to write the reviews where I'm not just kind of just, falling over the creative team. But when you have such a series, it's kind of hard not to fall over the creative team, whether it's art, whether it's words, because you took this character that we grew up with, me and you, and we were introduced to, Venom Lethal Protector, the foil covers, the die cut covers, this thing, this character,
the darker Spider-Man,
right? Amazing Spider-Man 252, right? And everything after, I believe it was 250, 252.
Yeah.
And everything after
was, Secret Wars 8, if that's
right. Thanks for more.
The track you're going with.
Yeah. And so now, fast forward to the Donny Cates era, we get that. Now we're getting this standalone character. Now we're getting, just more like, oh, I'm just I want to kill Spider-Man. Well, wait a second. Now he has a son. Now he's a tortured soul. Now he's trying to figure out his spot in the world. Now he's trying to figure out how to be a better father. He doesn't want to be Venom anymore. He doesn't want nothing to do with the symbiote. He just wants to be a good dad to his son, and he wants to rebuild that character. But wait, here comes the King in Black. Here comes Null. Here comes all this other shit.
Ooh, here comes Absolute Carnage.
Here comes Carnage.
Here comes hand severing fun,
right,
on Venom Island.
Yeah, Venom Island. And the thing is I ate so much crow because I remember when Venom Island came out, I'm like, God, we've been here before, Donny Cates. Why are you going back to Spider Island? And it was something completely different. And to kind of go back to what I talked about Clunrad doing with Wonder Woman, we still have Wonder Woman, but we don't have the same world as Wonder Woman. And that's what we see with Donny Cates. We still have Venom, we still have Eddie Brock, but we don't have the same world that we are used to seeing Eddie Brock and these series. And I think as you read it and as time goes on, and then especially now with what Ram and Ewing are doing with Venom, holy shit, Clea.
Well, they're taking this new foundation that Donny Cates established and just saying, okay, we're just going to take it to the next logical step.
Yeah.
And I'm going back to Cates' run briefly, and I think I mentioned this earlier this year when we were talking about Venom.
Yeah.
Is to me the most obvious comparison for Cates' Venom run is Miller's Daredevil run. And I say that because both runs, they honor what's come before, but they fundamentally change our understanding of the character and his world and what that world is, right? Yep. Like there's pre-Miller Daredevil and there's post-Miller Daredevil, and they're two very freaking different things.
Sure.
The same thing holds true for Venom.
Oh, absolutely.
You cannot put this genie back in the bottle.
Nope.
There's no going back from this. You can't just get rid of Dylan. You can't just get rid of the King in Black stuff. You can't just have Eddie Brock revert to being this guy that Spider-Man punches in the head every couple issues.
Right.
It's just not possible unless you're a complete hack. And the fact that Marvel has told Ewing and Ram V, hey, we trust you, just run with this, and they are, and they're taking it to the next logical level. And for God's sake, they got Brian Hitch to draw this thing. Like, Brian Hitch on a Venom comic? Is that something we would have ever seen?
Yeah.
Or thought to it that we'd be seeing 15, 20 years ago? Of course not.
No.
And
if you say yes, you're absolutely liar. No one thought this. No one thought this. No.
I mean, Marvel is deliberately taking Venom and making it a marquee comic for their line.
Yeah. And that's
this is not precedented at all.
And that's the great thing, is because it's kind of like who follows Cates. It's like you said, because everything that Cates and Stegman has done through that run, you can't undo. You have to keep building on that. They completely came in, leveled the building that was Venom. They laid a foundation. They gave you about 3 or 4 stories of a building, and now they're handing it off to the next artists, writers, creative team in Marvel. Now, the first two, we're 2 issues in to Venom, of the Ram and Ram V and the Ewing run, and they've built onto that, you know. And you're sitting here, you're reading like, oh, okay, well, we still have Dylan. Okay, so now Dylan is trying to figure out his place in this world.
Right.
Oh, by the way, he's Venom now. He doesn't want to be Venom, but he's Venom. And now, you know, Eddie Brock is no longer Venom. Eddie Brock is Captain Universe / the King in Black. So he is like super strong. He is in control of the hive mind. Where do we go from here? Because so now
you can't just tell the quote unquote same old Venom stories now.
Right.
You know,
because
he's not just gonna go out and lethally protect the neighborhood.
Right.
You know,
and what happens, right. And what happens when Venom / Dylan Brock goes up against the King in Black / Eddie Brock, his dad? It's gonna happen. It has to happen.
Well, the neat thing about this new run is Ram V and Al Ewing are such cerebral writers.
Yes.
Like they're not writers that you would think to immediately pair with Venom, right?
No.
Like Donny Cates is he's smart, but he's also a very, I don't want to say lizard brain because that sounds reductive, but he's a very action-oriented writer.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Absolutely. I don't think action-oriented at all when I think about Ram V and Al Ewing. I think about contemplative stuff like Blue and Green.
Yeah.
Or, Immortal Hulk. Coincidence.
Right.
You know, like these are that to me is the clearest signal that Marvel is like, okay, we've committed to this path. And we're going to keep going down it, and we're going to keep continuing to hammer away at this redefinition of who and what Venom is.
Yeah. And the thing is something like this, because you have two very different approaches to Venom. Nice back scratcher, by the way.
Oh, yeah, dude, listen.
But
skin is dry. It's the air is very dry.
Yeah, no worries.
I forgot to mute. At least I didn't bust ass when I forgot to mute.
Completely broke my concentration. Anyway, where's that? Oh yeah. So with Donny Cates, you have this multiple just out of control forest fire burning of a story, you know, and it's just here's the flames, here's everything. Do what you will with it. I've done my part. I'm fine with this. But with Ewing and Ram V, I think what we're seeing in the first couple issues is a very different, very slow burn that, you know, if I remember correctly, we left off with Dylan kind of being surrounded by, what is his name?
Military folk.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the mayor's name but either way,
McCheese.
What's that?
McCheese, Mayor McCheese.
Mayor McCheese. Yeah. We talked about this. I think we covered this a few shows ago, where it's very X-Men-ish, where they're battling against the symbiotes and this and that. They found Dylan and they found Venom and they found Venom as a whole, and they were kind of closing in on him. But that's what I absolutely love, that the fact that we came from a huge forest fire, just out of control forest fire of holy shit, what's happening with this with Venom, this beloved character that we grew up with essentially. And now we have the slow burn. We ripped through 35, 40 issues of the Kate Stegman era.
30.
Was it 30?
Yeah, 30.
30?
30 plus 5 issues for King in Black, plus however many issues Absolute Carnage was. I think also 5. So I guess 40 altogether if you want to count those in there.
We'll go 30. So we burned through 30 issues and we're like, holy shit, what happened? And now we got these 2 issues where it's like, it's a controlled burn. Sit down. Let's roast some marshmallows. Let's sing Kumbaya. Let's hold hands. Let's talk about some stuff. There's no need to read on. There's no need to, and I think that's what the character needed, because we got new characters. We got not one, but two miniseries that roped in, actually three technically, with Venom Island, but we had these 2 to 3 series that kind of roped into the storyline, and we're just like, oh, another Marvel storyline. But wait. No, because it's still Kate's writing it. So it's different. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we're sitting here and we gave it to different people to write. I mean, Kate still continued to kill it issue after issue after issue.
Well, and there's really a handful of times that immediately spring to mind where, like Kate's and Venom, or Miller and Daredevil, where quite simply a writer and or creative team comes along and just utterly flips the script and completely redefines, completely moving forward, our understanding of this character. Miller, Daredevil, I'm thinking Morrison with Animal Man and
Okay.
And I'm sure there's just maybe a handful of others that, of course, Claremont on X-Men.
Yeah.
And really, there's just not as many that come to mind that strike like that. And so, I mean, really, the Kate's run of Venom is in rarefied air. I mean, could we nitpick some stuff about it? Sure, whatever. But Alan Moore Swamp Thing. That was the other thing I was thinking about. There's before more and there's after more. Period. And I mean, it just does not happen often, and it's so cool when it does happen. And I really hope that Marvel sticks to their guns and doesn't find a way to undo all this or retcon it or have a secret war and we forget about it. And, in this time next year, Spidey's back to fighting Venom, swinging around New York or whatever. And I really and truly hope that they stick to their guns and allow these intelligent, creative, cerebral writers to just do their damn job and tell a story that nobody's expecting.
Right. And I think that's the great thing is and that's what we haven't seen a lot of times, especially from, and not to nitpick on the big two, but I think that is the downside of the big two, is that they want to sit here, and we get it.
They have to play it safe to a certain degree.
And for DC, it's Superman, it's Batman, it's Wonder Woman.
You're never going to have, the death of Superman is never going to be permanent, right?
Right.
Of course not. But every so often, you get these high-hanging fruit characters in a sense that maybe they're on the verge of cancellation. Maybe they're just kind of third or fourth tier characters. And some lucky so-and-so is told, dude, just go hog wild. See if you can gin up some interest in this.
Well, yeah, it's just like when we take our dog to the dog park, right? We go into the little fenced-in area, and at first he has a leash on just because he's an older pooch, but he normally 98% of the time plays fair. And that's what the big two feels like a lot of times when you take them to the dog park. We're taking our favorite characters to the dog park, and what we want to do is when we go to the dog park, we want to unchain that leash.
Yeah.
But when DC doesn't let us unchain that leash.
Right.
So what you get is, you get Batman, but you're like, I want Batman, but oh, wait a second. We get 12 issues of him sitting in the Batcave. What the flip? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you get
and give us something that we can sink our teeth in. We get
like Fear State, right?
What's that?
Like Fear State.
Sure.
You don't get Fear State very often, right?
Right.
And I mean, these things are cyclical too. You're gonna have it go out so far, so radical for so long, and now we've got Josh Williamson writing the main Batman book, And he's an okay writer. He's not bad. I don't have anything against him. Sometimes he hits, sometimes he misses. And 2 issues in on his run so far, and it's enjoyable. It's fine. It's serviceable. It gets the job done.
Absolutely.
I don't throw it across the room when I read it or anything like that, but we're not reinventing the wheel. It's just good storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And you're always going to have to expect that to a certain degree with the big 2 because they have to protect the IP, which is what makes the curious case of the X-Men in recent years all that much more curious. Because I cannot freaking believe that we are 3 years post Hoxpox and this thing is not only still going, but it is fixing to enter the new phase, the next phase, the post Jonathan Hickman phase, and they are showing no signs of letting up.
Has it been that long since Hoxpox? Has it been 3
Brother, it was 3 years ago.
Holy cow.
Yeah. I tell you no lie. Yeah. It was late 2018.
I mean, Hoxpox is some good reading right there, but I'm not even a huge X-Men fan, but man, of Hoxpox isn't some good reading.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hoxpox is, man, it's just crazy. Like, talk about completely reinventing the wheel. Marvel just threw everything you think you know about the X-Men out, and in doing so, completely reinvented their entire freaking line.
Right.
That's like if they took Age of Apocalypse and just said, nope, this is the world the X-Men live in now.
Yeah.
Everything else is done.
Yeah. But
that's essentially what they did. And it's working. It's working so well that even with the main architect, Jonathan Hickman, exiting stage left now, they're still running with it. I mean, shit, power to them. Do the weirdest crap you can imagine with the X-Men, please.
Well, and the weirdest thing and the greatest thing, and once again, the reason we talked about earlier in the show, like, we know what Nightcrawler, Cyclops, name an X-Men, we know what they can do, we know their powers, we know their stories, but change that world. Show me what they do when shit isn't Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
You know? Show me something different. We understand what they can do. We got their history. We get that part. Show me something different.
They changed the world. Just like you're talking about with Wonder Woman. It's the same characters and everything else is different.
Right. Bring in a talking, flipping tree, and I am here. I see Treebeard in X-Men. I am here, bro.
Yes.
As the
all hail Krakoa. And I mean, not for nothing, but dude, the X-Men line has been stupid thick with talented writers and artists since. I mean, my God, there's not a single, well, maybe one. There's almost not a single writer or artist worth their salt that is just not coming up with the craziest crap imaginable. I mean, look, I am not the biggest Tenny Howard fan, but you know, God love her, she just dug right into Excalibur and said, I'm making this book my own. Here's my little crazy magic corner of Krakoa. I'm going with this.
And I love the fact.
You know what? I gotta say, hats off to her.
Yeah.
The last few issues where everything finally starts kind of coming together and War on Otherworld type stuff, I was genuinely enthralled and could not wait for the next issue. And I was like, damn, do I need to go back and reread Excalibur now? Because she was clearly planning some stuff out that I just didn't see coming together. So, I mean, hats off.
And the thing is, the great thing about that is, like, you know, the X fan base, and I say this as nicely and as calmly as possible, they are just as toxic at times, kids, look what I'm doing in quotation marks, at times, can be just as toxic as the Star Wars fan base.
Sure.
Which Star Wars is what? But the thing is, all these writers, they have really stand the test of time. They have said, listen, we're going to take your beloved characters. They're still the same. But the thing is, we're going to give them a ham sandwich and they're kosher.
I love that. I love it. I can't disagree with that. I mean,
and it works.
I mean, honestly, 3 years ago, Hawks Pox, we're all having a little bit of shock.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell are you expecting me to get into here? They're like, they're all dying, and now they're being resurrected, and of course, everybody predictably flipped their shit when it was all first going down.
Right.
But man, everything cooled off. Everyone kind of caught the vibe a little bit. And I mean, now this is what the X-Men are. Yeah. And as long as it remains the huge cash cow for Marvel that it's become in the last 3 years and steadily line-wide maintained, I don't see them going back. In fact, if it may not really surprise me if the Krakoa version of the X-Men is what we eventually see debut in the MCU.
Sure. I mean, and why not? I mean, it's I don't want to say it's beloved, but it's starting to, as time wears on, it's become more accepted, and it's become almost, well, I mean, now it's, and dare I say, it's that ring bearer, it's that standard X-Men story now. That if
for better or worse, the movies and the comics feed off of each other.
Sure, absolutely they do.
And it is reciprocal, and that's what's going to happen when you've got the Mouse House as your corporate overlord, and they're going to milk that IP for all it's worth. And I mean, it is what it is.
Sure.
But shit, if we're going to keep getting good comics like this out of it, yeah, I'm down.
And any day of the week, Monday through Monday.
Any day of the week. So, man, we've been going for like almost 90 minutes now, Mike. Do you have anything else that was your favorite thing this year? I mean, I honestly had a bunch of good things this year. And we've talked about a lot of them, but man, we didn't talk about Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil, or at least the first 2 issues that have come out so far of Devil's Reign. We didn't talk about Amazing Spider-Man Beyond. I mean, gosh, there's so many
things. You what, I'm gonna hit you real quick with the deep we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Brubaker, or I'm sorry, not Brubaker's. I'm sorry, but we didn't talk. Oh my God, I can't remember.
Are you talking about? Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips, that Texas boy?
Hold on,
because that's definitely something we should have talked about.
Hold on.
You had a list. I saw it.
I did. I have a list. And I am completely
you futzed it.
Oh my God, keep talking. So we look professional.
Just
rap a song, man. Sing a song by Wu-Tang Clan or something. Shit.
Oh gosh, you don't want that.
Yes, well, sing a George Strait song from Oklahoma. Sing a country.
Just because I'm in Oklahoma doesn't mean I'm going to sing George Strait.
Man, help me out, man. You see?
Oh my gosh!
Internet.
Are you talking about Tommy Taylor's Nightwing?
No.
Are you talking about Friday by Ed Brubaker?
Thank you. It is Ed Brubaker. Friday. The Humble Bundle. The Humble Bundle.
No, you said Bumble.
I didn't. It's not like it's live. Thank you. It's not like we have one viewer looking at this, probably going, "Oh, hey, the bearded fat kid doesn't know his comic people."
I think it's a Bumble.
Nah, the Humble Bumble. But yeah, Friday, man, the Humble Bundle, which is still going on. Friday was really cool.
Yeah, it's really different. Really, I mean, just really different for Brubaker.
Yeah, right? It really was.
It was in his crime fiction wheelhouse, but a completely different take. Yeah. And I think in the and God, Marcos Martin on art.
Ooh,
yeah, I want more Friday in like right now.
Yeah.
He's basically, it's his take on like an Encyclopedia Brown type story, and
very good Encyclopedia Brown. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not. My late afternoon coffee may or may not be starting to wear off. But yeah, Friday is really cool. It came in this weird size little, like, I don't know, smaller than a comic, but larger than a pamphlet comic.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah, super awesome stuff. It's like it's less crime focused and more mystery focused, I guess.
Very,
Is a good way to put it.
Very gumshoeish.
Yeah, and it's basically PG-13. I think there's a couple 4-letter words in there, but you know, nothing terrifying that these middle school kids haven't heard 100 times on the bus.
On the Twitter.
On the Twitter, that's right. That's right. So, but man, I gotta say, like 2021 wound up being a really, really strong year for comics.
Sure.
I we could probably go on for another 90 minutes if we wanted, talking about the things that we love, but in all, mountain of shit that 2021 was writ large, there was good stuff in there. And absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's our obligation, but it's, something that we feel like we ought to do, to just say, hey, forget that gnarly, nasty crap for a little while. Let's just talk about stuff that makes you feel good. And we get to do that more or less every week on this show. So, Mike, my hats off to you for putting up with my crap every week ish.
It's a hair show, man. You got some great hair.
Listen, it is very good hair. I get it cut every month.
Yeah. I'm actually jealous because I'm starting to lose mine at 43, and you got a full head of great pomade.
It's not even really thinning yet. I got it, and I'm at 41, so I'm lucky. And now, see, I'm getting to that stately stage where I've got odd gray hairs just popping up in random places.
Yeah,
and it gives me a sort of dignified gentleman look. And I'm down with that. Like, if you those Touch of Gray commercials where you comb that crap into your hair and it brings some of the color back, but not all of it. And that's where I'm at, only au natural.
So you're singing in the shower, gonna wash that gray right out.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's it for us this week. It is going to be, yes, go ahead.
Oh, wait a minute. It is not, that is not it for us this week. We, even though comic-watch.com is all done on a voluntary basis, we are getting some sponsorship help.
Absolutely. Yes, we do want to throw our sponsors out there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We got Frankie's Comics, which you can visit at frankiescomics.com. Carson's Corner, which you can visit at carsonscorner.com. That is Carson's with a K, Karsons corner.com. And then Lemon Juice McGee's Comic Cavalcade, which you can visit at lemonjuicecomics.com. Even though me and Matt and everyone else is doing this voluntarily, we do need some help. And Frankie's Comics, Carson's Corner, and Lemon Juice McGee's Comic Cavalcade are absolutely helping us by sponsoring us, and we thank them. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. We don't thank them often enough. Shame on us. But we couldn't do this without a little background sponsorship in there. So hats off to them. Hats off to our listeners. We promise in the year 2022 we're going to do a better job of getting our shows on to Spotify et al. In a more timely fashion.
Right. It is a slow burning process. We are trying as fast as we can.
Yes, absolutely. And we also are reposting these episodes via link on the site itself, typically the Monday after they air. So you can always check them out there as well. So next week, we don't know. Maybe we'll talk about things we hated in 2021. Probably not, because we want to keep that positive vibe going.
Right.
But until then, thank you all so much for listening. I'm Matt. This is Mike. And this is the Comic Watchers Show. Until next time, support your local comic shop. Read something cool. And above all, be good to each other. Thank you and good night.